Hey pllesties! Now that you're an A+ PLAVE fan, you are ready to hear about the most complicated part about PLAVE yet. There's actually a reason why they look like webtoon characters, and there's also a reason why the 6th Summer music video, of which you can see screenshots behind me, looks differently than all the other stuff. But I'm not gonna spoil too much. Here's a basic introduction into their lore, and I know it sounds crazy for how long the video is, but believe it or not, the lore actually goes even deeper, and I highly recommend that you look up lore videos on PLAVE. I think on TikTok for sure there are some really good series. On YouTube I don't know, but I would guess as much. But enough yapping, let's get to yapping. PLAVE are webtoon characters, but they're also real people, but you also can't read their webtoon anywhere. Let me explain. So the lore of PLAVE is that they are from different webtoons. They're all from the same author. The first one is Yejun's webtoon, which is a sort of like science fiction healing underwater webtoon. Again, this is not a real webtoon. This is just the lore of PLAVE. This author basically made this webtoon, had some success, and was like, okay, let me publish the next one. The next one is Noah's webtoon, which is a sort of fantasy magical webtoon. This is why he has this castle, this is why he looks like the way he does. Bambi and Eunho are from the same webtoon called Chroma Drift. It's also the webtoon we know the most about. It was also the least successful webtoon. In PLAVE's lore, the author of these 3 webtoons is referred to as Rêve, which is French for dream. Because Chroma Drift didn't really do well, they said, I'm gonna give up doing webtoons. Now you may wonder, what about Hamin? Well, Hamin was from a drafted webtoon, so it never got to be published. Which is why in the Wait For You music video, you see him sort of in this empty space. And you see him surrounded by these cubes. Now, one thing that you need to know about the author is that after giving up the webtoon things, they went to become a software engineer, something like that, and through one way or another manages to contact Hamin in this empty space. What about the other characters? You know, when webtoon characters get published but they aren't loved anymore, they basically disappear. One by the other, they do not exist anymore. That's why in the worlds of the 4 members that had their webtoons published but no longer are popular, they are the only people there because all of the side characters are already forgotten. Now, through one way or another, Hamin manages to contact them, which is why in the Wait For You music video, for each of their worlds, they get the sort of signal that says hello to them. They then finally all come together. This is also why, for example, Hamin doesn't have a birthday, because he's not a published character. His profile was basically incomplete. Asteroom is basically the space between Terra, which is where we live, we humans, and Kailum, which is the sort of webtoon universe. Honestly, don't quote this video because I'm just putting together all the things I could remember, because the lore, you have to read quite a lot for it, and I just don't like reading. But anyway, Asteroom is the space where they can get closer to us, and that's also why the fan concert was called Hello Asteroom, because that's where we met. At the end of the Way For Love music video, you see these ominous figures. We don't know their identities quite yet, but they obviously showed up in the Dash music video as Caligo. And you must understand, PLAVE, being together and being in this world, being in Asteroom, is against the law of that webtoon universe. If you are forgotten, you're supposed to disappear. But here they are, and they continue to exist because now we love them. PLAVE's fans, PLE, are the reason why PLAVE continues to exist. That's also why Asteroom, or the city that they arrive at in the Way For Love music video, as well as the city where they fight in the Dash music video, if you look around, it's full of references of our memories that we have had together with PLAVE. There are buildings and signs that reference, for example, Pump Up the Volume or Why. There are also buildings and billboards that reference insider jokes, so if you haven't already taken the time to look at the scenery in the Dash music video, you should. It's really fun. Now, one of the Caligos is actually named Terry, and Terry is also from the same webtoon as Bambi and Unho. I could probably make a whole video just about this webtoon, but the gist of the webtoon is that Bambi and Unho are detectives, and Chroma Drift is in some sort of post-apocalyptic world, and they are struggling with a disease or something, or a drug that has spread really far, and they want to rein it in. But it's like a really shitty job, so no one really wants to investigate it, so they send Bambi and Unho eventually. And they don't like each other, by the way. They're like, who is this guy? Why is he so incompetent? Why is he so annoying? Why won't he stop talking? They didn't know each other before becoming detective partners. And Unho actually, as you know, he has this firepower, comes from an experimental facility. He's basically a lab child. And in that facility, he also got to know Terry. And if you have one of the Dash albums, you will also see notes on like, if you find Unho, immediately tell Terry. So what is PLAVE's goal? Why are they together? We haven't really heard anything concrete, but my guess is that they just want to be best friends and they want to be our best friend as well. That's all. And then there's Caligo, like that little hater that just doesn't like seeing them happy. Now, one thing that always confused me was why was the Sixth Summer music video in this animation style instead of the regular 3D models? That's because it was not an official work by the author. As you know, all of these characters are not together in one world. Yet the Sixth Summer tells a story about all of them being together. It's because it is a fan work created by someone who is a fan of all the author's works. That's also why, if you watch the music video, you will find some flaws and inconsistencies. But then how is it possible that Hamin is in there because he was never published? As you know, Hamin is an anomaly in this whole webtoon universe. He's not even supposed to exist. And somehow through all the cracks in the universe, he managed to exist regardless. And he also, for lack of a better description, just snuck himself into this fan work. Anyway, how do we know all of this? Because from their live streams and stuff, they don't really talk that much about it. It's actually like additional content that you can find sprinkled in here and there. The company started publishing more about the lore through various channels, such as the birthday kits, where you could read like a little bit, and we just got a little bit more with each birthday. Then, during the weeks leading up to the Dash comeback, they released through unofficial channels, meaning that if you go to their official accounts, you will find nothing about this. It all starts in the Asterum fan cafe. If you remember, I talked about this is building a real cafe. But one day, mysteriously, on a wall, these posters showed up. Lost Media Society, join our club. PLAVE themselves and the company said nothing about this. But as you can see here in the bottom, there was a QR code. We had to decode the date on which the link will be available. And on that date, you could find a Google form that was not by the company. In this form, you could leave your email address. You were also asked a bunch of other things, but I don't really remember. And then after a while, you would get an invitation email saying like, welcome to the LMS club. And you could finally open this website, Lost Media Society. Which, by the way, had a banger background music. The goal of this club, which was a school club of that school that PLAVE goes to, like Songi Arts, from the Sixth Summer. And their goal is to uncover the works of Rêve, which you can see here in the middle. The 3V3R is backwards for Rêve. Why is the media lost? Because once Rêve contacted Hamin, and they found out that Caligo doesn't really want PLAVE to exist, Rêve started to delete and scrub the internet of any and all content of the webtoons. This is also why we can't read any of it. But the Lost Media Society, which is also associated with Calico, was keen on finding out more. And there were like a bunch of puzzles and like codes that honestly were too difficult for me to even attempt to decode. But through those, we would find out more about the lore of the webtoons through like little crumbs, like comments that I found in old forums and stuff like that. Once the application period ended, the poster in the cafe was also removed. The marketing of this was so freaking genius and it was so fun. Anyway, believe it or not, I just gave you a surface level explanation of the lore. Tuna also made a video on the lore that explains it a little bit more structured and detailed than I did. But don't worry if you don't understand everything, it's still fun regardless. With that, we are now in a new trilogy because it's like Calico Part 1, so let's see what the other parts will reveal to us. Okay, thanks to some very nice pleas, I realized I made a mistake when talking about which webtoon was popular and why they ended. So I was like, okay, I guess I have to actually look at the Lost Media Society website again. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. So the order was right. The first webtoon was Yejun's webtoon. It doesn't have an English title. It's called something like Today I'm Healing or Today I'm Taking Care, like in a medical sense. And it's not a typical webtoon, it's a 4-panel like mini comic series. And it was basically like a slice of life in the sort of fantasy world. At the beginning it didn't have a lot of attention, but slowly it went viral. It is unknown why it ended, or if it ended. The second webtoon was Noah's webtoon, right? It is called Heart of the Moon. This is the translated title. Started out as an amateur webtoon and eventually was picked up to be actually serialized. We also don't know what happened to it. Now, Chroma Drift, unlike what I said in my last video, it wasn't discontinued because it was the least popular. It was discontinued because the webtoon platform ran into financial problems and had to suspend their services. According to the lore, Chroma Drift actually had a fandom even. They also had a name, like Chromagnon. Everything else, I think I wasn't too far off. Anyway, now that I'm on the site, let me tell you a few more things. About the author, there is a speculation that this is an overseas resident, because for domestic readers there are some unfamiliar elements, but they don't really specify what. It also says because everything was deleted, they believe that the artists themselves wanted to erase all traces. The world of Chroma Drift is also, I think, better described as dystopian, though I don't know, it doesn't really make a big difference if I say post-apocalyptic or dystopian, like, I guess. Anyway, now that you're here, let me play you the sound of the site. Oh my god, why is it so good? You can actually go on the site yourself, it's all in Korean, but depending on the browser that you use, you can turn on auto translation. There just isn't that big join now button anymore. Anyway, you know what a real lost media is? There was one time that they put a bucket head on Hamin and it was just like for a short clip, and then they never put it back on him again. And it's been like, I don't know, half a year or something, I don't know, many months, and I want it back. Anyway, in the comment that I'm responding to, there is a little bit more detail about like some other stuff. So please check it out and read it and say thank you to that lovely plea who explained it all. There was also another one, but I can only tag one comment. But yeah, this feels like a group project. You can't tell which one of these marshmallow babies correlate to which PLAVE member. If you don't know that much about them, you are in for a treat because the lore for these little babies goes so deep. Each of them have names, each of them have their personalities, so they're kind of the PLAVE members, but also kind of not. The first one is called meumemimu, and you will quickly come to realize that their names kind of relate to the members' names. So with Yejun, it's E and U in his name, and with Mimu, it's also E and U. So with Eunho, it's Mumo, because it's U, Ho, Eunho, so it's Mumo, U-O. It's even easier to see if you know how to read Korean. which, by the way, you can pick up in like 15 minutes. This baby's name is Meumi, and it in Korean would be Myami, so Hamin, Myami, and they picked Meow because like cat. Now with Bambi, it gets a little bit trickier. You need to use the vowels from his two names. So we know him as Bambi, but like his non-stage name, I guess, is Bongu. So you pick the E from Bambi and you pick the U from Bongu, you get Mimu. Look at them. They're so cute. Now, the trickiest one is moi, and it is moi from the French word moi, but it's also the a from noir, or he is also often referred to as noir, kind of like putting the O and A together. I can't really pronounce it. It's also kind of like a kiss sound. It's like mwah. But also because Noah has like this whole thing going on that he's like from Paris and stuff. Now, where are they from? Like, what are these creatures? They first appeared before the Dash comeback really started, during the pre-promotions. And oh my god, remember the Lost Media Society site that I talked about a while ago? If you don't know what I mean, you should go back and watch it. But on that website, they actually provided a little riddle, a little code, and if you decoded it, it would say something like, "We will meet you at the Ferris wheel" or something. And there was like one live stream, if you remember, in Bambi's room background, there is a big Ferris wheel. And during one of the live streams, you could see them like in there. Oh, it was actually this live stream. So you could see 3 of them in the Ferris wheel, like as little shadows. And then you could see the other 2 in one of the like arcade game thingies on the screen. And we were like, what are these? Are these gonna be like the new mascots? Are they gonna be like plushies? Before I explain you that, let's take a closer look at them. So this one is, if you remember, Memu. And Memu obviously resembles Yejun quite a lot, with like the very friendly expression, of course the blue ears, and the polite posture. Ma is a little sassy baby with like the beauty mark on the cheek and the yellow ears, of course, and the eyelashes. You may notice already, even though they follow the same pattern, they actually have like slight differences. Mimu has ears that are further apart and down on the side, and there are also some other details. But yeah, pink, little surprised expression. Mumu's ears are closer together, so they kind of make him look like a dog, and his eyes are also turned downwards, and he has like the little bottom eyelashes, and of course the pointy eyebrows. And they appeared on a radio show once, and the host asked, I think it was like Sanu from The Boys, is that his name? He asked like, is he angry? And Eunho was like, no, he's just hungry. Miami has the same straight eyes as his PLAVE counterpart, and look how he stands, like so straight. If we compare them side by side, you can actually tell that Mimu is the shortest of them, even like in the full body. And you can tell the ears, for example, in Mimu's ears, they are closer together, so he looks more like a bunny. You can't see it on these pictures, they also have like little round tails. Now, this is the official comic of the babies. By the way, I just realized I have never said their name. Their name is meumemimu, and you will be like really confused, like, how do I remember that? It sounds like a random mix of syllables, but it's actually not random at all. And again, if you know how to read Korean, this is actually pretty easy to tell. In Korean, PLAVE is spelled pllestie. So you have the u, e, I, sound in each syllable. And remember, the names of each singular marshmallow baby, their names are also like with the M syllables and the vowels from the names of the members. Sometimes you will see it abbreviated as like MMMM, like 4 M's. And sometimes people ask me like, why is it not 5 M's? Because they're like 5 members, right? But it's not 5 members, it's 4 syllables in PLAVE. So again, it's pllestie, so it's meumemimu. Now the lore is, if you have watched the Dash music video, you've seen them. And if you watch the live streams, you've also seen the members talk about them. As everything in the Kailum universe, which is where PLAVE are, Every entity is a character from a webtoon, and these 5 babies actually were in their own webtoon, and they kind of lost popularity. Or I don't know if they were side characters or if they were like main characters, I don't remember. And so they were just roaming the dark little universe of theirs until Calico, if you remember, the villain figure in the PLAVE universe, found them and used them as basically test subjects because they wanted to reach Asterum where PLAVE was hanging out. Because again, they don't really want PLAVE to be existing like that. And it has been really difficult to get to Asterum, so they wanted to try like smaller subjects and basically just like shoot them over there. And they also wanted to get to Terra, where we live. When they arrived eventually, they were scattered. Like, I think Miami was the first one to arrive, and then the others were in different places. They eventually found each other, and then the first character that found, like the first person, was Noah's alpaca. And Noah's alpaca brought them to Noah, and Noah found them, and he talked about how when they first showed up, they were like dirty and like scared, and they don't really know how to talk, but they seem to understand words a little bit. And then Yejun gave them all a bath. Now, what is this comic about, actually? So this story goes that when the 5 of them united, they were like walking around, and then suddenly Mumu disappeared. And it turns out that Mumu was looking for food, and he found like a fridge with apples. Now here's another piece of lore that you need to know. Their little ears, they're actually antennas, and they're magnetic. So sometimes when they roam around Terra or something, you will find them stuck on magnetic things, such as this fridge. And to save Mumu, and as well as to sort of hide themselves better and not draw too much attention, Moi came up with the idea of making these little hats that protect their antenna, which is why here you can see them putting them on and rescuing Mumu. And they all fall down, and then they happily walk around, and Mimu made sure that Mumu doesn't get lost again. And I know you've seen these cute little creatures and you're like, please, can I have them? Yes. Their plushies as well as their keychains are permanent items in the Vlast merch store, but they are made to pre-order. So I don't really know how that works. However, what I want to point out is if you look at the dimensions, even here, Mimu is shorter than everyone else. And it's not just because of the ears, it's like the actual, like, the head and body is shorter. And also, you can't see it here, but like Mumu's body, like so many pictures have come out of him where he's just like chubbier than the others. Their ears also are still magnetic, and you can also attach them to each other. It's so cute. And you can also buy the little hats. There's actually even more lore to them. For example, Mumu, when he actually landed on a snowy mountain where he got to know Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, and they became friends. So Mumu waits all year for Christmas to meet his friend Rudolph again. Moi also knows how to use magic and uses Noah's like spell books to practice, and sometimes things go a little bit wrong. Miami is said to really love all of the other meumemimus, and he especially loves Mumu getting like close and clingy. Mimu is said to be very sensitive to like changes and like earthquakes and stuff like that, and he notices when something happens way before everyone else, but he's really clumsy, so he can't react in time, and so he starts crying. Now with Mimu, the funny thing about him is that Bambi like barely acknowledges him. It's like his colleague. Eunho has called Mumu his baby multiple times, and please are like his mom. Noah and Hamin call themselves Hyungs to them, and Yejun called him a little punk. Anyway, I'm out of time. Fork found in kitchen, I guess. Every time I talk about the world building behind PLAVE, I always get the same question, which is like, how do you know when they are talking on the live streams that they are talking about a real life experience, or if they are just making something up for the lore? The short answer is that it's actually pretty obvious, because they themselves, like the members on the live streams, very rarely actually talk about the lore. In the streams, in interviews, every time they themselves are speaking directly, they might introduce the lore like a little bit at the beginning, but because their priority is to have a human connection with that, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense for them to sort of role play a character from a webtoon. And if they do talk about the lore, it actually is always pretty obvious, because it will seem evidently fictional and nonsensical almost if you were to look at it from a lens of like, is this real life or fiction? And when they do talk about the lore outside of introductions, it's almost always like comedic. So they will say things like, oh, because we're aliens, we don't have to poop. Obviously they have to poop, my god. Or Noah will talk about that he has an alpaca that cleans up his house, and like, come on. And pretty much anything else that sounds realistic, that sounds possible, they tell us because it is true. I personally saw this discussion firsthand when people were talking about Noah, who is known for having a lot of nightmares. And they released a part of lore, I think I don't know if it was his birthday kit or another member's or something else. I forgot where it was from. But there was part of the lore that the webtoon character that Anu represents, that in his webtoon, he was a lab child. So he was basically an experiment in a laboratory, and he escaped when he was a young teenager. And because of that, he always has nightmares. And that's what they said in the lore. And so some people criticize that for saying, like, how can you use something that is so personal to him for the lore? For fiction, basically. And since then, people have been asking more and more, like, how do we know if it's real? How do we know if it's lore? But to be honest, I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but it's just media literacy. It's also extremely common for artists to use real-life experiences in their own work, right? That a singer might go through a relationship and they might sing about that relationship. A painter might have had a very difficult childhood and they might paint about it. Like, it's really not that unusual at all. And the thing is, it might feel like the company is exploiting real life experiences of the members, but you have to keep in mind that the members themselves are incredibly involved in everything. I was actually surprised when the other day Noah was talking about how he was very satisfied with the outfits for Dash, the ones that you see on the screen right now, and that he actually participated in it. I don't know if he specified if it was just him or like all of the members, but you can see I actually thought that they would be like more hands-off when it comes to their outfits. Not really because I think they have nothing to say about them, but because they are already so involved and busy, and I was like, oh, maybe they would let other people do some stuff too. But it's not even just the outfits, it's also the storyboarding, so I would absolutely not be surprised if they are also giving input in the lore and the world building. And the other thing that you need to keep in mind is that it is extremely evident that the company very, very much cares about the members and adores them. And it becomes evident only after you got to know both the company and the members. And for me, my personal way to tell is actually through the design work of the company. Because as you know, I am a professional designer. I studied design, so I can tell what a designer's intentions were when it comes to their work. And without fail, every single thing that they make is so full of the personalities of the members, because whoever is the staff making the designs truly, truly knows them. And they almost always go out the extra mile to customize things even more for any specific member. The work that the company puts out, so not the PLAVE members themselves directly, but the company as in their designs, their merch, the way that they communicate, is always like very, very detailed. This makes me sound like I would defend the company no matter what, but that's not true at all. I'm just talking about the details that they put into their work. And I'm the proud owner of the magazine that they made last year. And it's full of little Easter eggs that are only possible if the staff that makes these things really, really knows the members. So this is a huge tangent to just say that I don't think that they would take anything from the members and exploit it for profit. Now, this is, of course, just my interpretation based off the things that they do. There is no official statement where they say, like, no, the nightmare thing was absolutely, like, greenlit by Uno. Maybe they will share that with us, maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, this is like the summary to distinguish whether or not something they say belongs to lore and what doesn't. However, there's one more thing you need to keep in mind. And this is something that I personally struggle with a lot, is when they add MSG to their fucking stories. And this is difficult for me because it is always like difficult to distinguish sarcasm or like jokes and stuff like that in a different language that you're not fluent in. And so there has been one particular radio show, which I kind of forgot which one it was, but where they were talking about their own stories and they exaggerated them. And to this day, I don't know how to tell what parts were exaggerated and which weren't. However, they don't do it a lot. There is one more instance that you as a fan, especially as a new fan, need to be careful about, which is that sometimes they will give spoilers about the next album or the next release, and they will lie about it. And I can't tell if it's like a common thing, or like maybe if you're Korean or if you're like a Korean K-pop fan, it's like really obvious to you. But to me, it is not. Like, it's literally lost in translation. And so sometimes they will say like, oh, the next release, it's gonna be like super dark and grungy, and then it's anything but that. So just keep in mind, before they release a new song, do not trust anything they say about it. Unfortunately, speaking from experience, where I really hyped myself up that Dash was gonna be like a sexy ass shaking song, and it was still good and I love it, but I thought it was gonna be something else. Anyway, if we're already talking about lies, I might as well give you another piece of information. If you're part of the company, you can skip the video now, you can leave. This is just for the fans. As much as PLAVE seem like very genuine and fun people, what we see and hear of them is still curated. Meaning there is a specific image that they want us to think of when we think of PLAVE, and there is a specific angle that we're supposed to look at them from. That is normal, that is not exclusive to PLAVE, that is the case for any and every single like celebrity, idol, even me. I do the same with you. Like, I know it can seem like you guys know me really well, but you don't. I only share very specific things with you, and I present myself in a very specific way to you. Not because I want to trick you or because I want to lie to you, but just because you guys have no business knowing me in and out. Neither do I have any business knowing you guys in and out, or any of us have the business knowing any of the PLAVE members in and out. I think what's really helpful is to understand the context that they live in. All of them are Korean young men, they live in Seoul, so there are a few things that you can deduce from that. For example, one thing that I love talking about is their very close relationship with their families. But the context is also that they are young Korean men in Korean families. And especially because they are now successful, of course, their family dotes on them. I'm not saying that they might not have their own family issues. I'm not saying that the love that they get from their families is not genuine. I'm just saying that it's important to look at it from that context. Or, like, I'm pretty sure none of them can cook extremely well. For no reason other than that they live in Seoul. There is no reason for them to know how to cook, other than basic meals. Because you can just go to a convenience store or like a restaurant that's 2 minutes away. You get what I mean? Like, they are their own autonomous people, and we don't know them personally. And that's okay. Let's just not be silly about it.